Hello everybody and welcome to this lecture. After learning how to create functions and recursive functions, we're sort of going to step away from those kind of implementations. Now we're going to start working on how we can interact with the user. In this lecture we're going to learn about a special variable called get, G-E-T. Now you've probably have encountered using get before, but you just haven't noticed. If you've ever been to a website and it has the file name blah 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 .php, and then after that PHP there's a question mark and then some name and then equals and then some value, that's using get. That's how PHP can be able to pass variables around from one page to another without having to use something we're going to learn later in the course. But today we're going to be learning how to use that super awesome variable called get and how we can play around with it. In this we're going to use a little bit of HTML. It's pretty basic HTML. It's just going to be writing a link and writing a form with an input box inside of it, so it's not a huge deal. Now let's go ahead and jump into writing some PHP code here first. Now I mentioned that the variable name was get. It's not just $GET. It's actually $_GET, and this is actually, it acts as an array. So if we were just to print out our variable here and then went to our file, it's going to tell us that it is an array, but since there's nothing inside of it. So if we were to add something, so name equals Bob, you can see it acts just like an array, and that's how you're going to be able to use get just like this. So how would we be able to get that variable or that key, that get variable within the URL? Well, since we just mentioned that get is an array, we can just say variable name is equal to get, and then like we can learn how to dereference an array just by using a key name. So get name, and if we were to echo hello and then the name, we would get hello Bob. Now what happens if we don't have this in there? We're going to get some problems. We're going to get this undefined index, so it doesn't exist inside of the get array. We have some functions that can check to see if it's available. So just sticking with it like this, what if I got rid of Bob? It's just going to tell us hello blank. The variable name does exist, but it just doesn't have a value, so it's empty. So when we're working with get like this, we want to use one of two functions, and I'll show you the difference in why you should use one versus the other. These functions are called isSet and empty. So what we do, we ask if, we'll use isSet first, so if isSet get name like this, then we can go ahead and echo that variable, so echo get name. Else we can say echo no name in the variable, in the URL, sorry. Okay, so now let's go ahead and see what happens. It's blank because this name variable exists in the URL, there's just no value. So if I were to get rid of name here and refresh, we would get there's no name in the URL. So isSet is is good to see if a key or any variable just exists. But when we want to use a get parameter like we are now, we're going to want to use the other function, which is called empty. So if empty, and this will return true if it is empty. So if it's empty, if get name is empty, then we'll echo no name supplied. Else we can echo, we'll echo hello name this time, get name. Just like that. So now if I refresh, you're going to see there's no name supplied. So now if I just add the name parameter into the variable, into the URL, sorry, we're still going to get no name supplied because it is in fact empty. Now if we add something after this, so Marcus, now we get a different result. It's going to say hello Marcus, just because it knows that it's not empty. Empty is kind of a combination of isSet and string length. So it's making two calls at once. So it's like it's a pseudo function in terms. So it checks, if this variable is set and the string length is greater than 0. So that's basically how empty works. And you're going to be using empty more than isSet when it comes to dealing with these kind of variables. Just because it could be set, question mark name equals in the URL. However, that doesn't mean there's always a value given to it. So you just want to use empty to see if it's both isSet and it has a string length greater than 0. That's how you work with get like that. So now, like I said, we're gonna use a little bit of HTML here. So first thing first, let's just create a link. And if you haven't used creating a link in HTML before, you start with the less than sign, the letter A, and then a space, and then these 4 letters href, which refer to where the link is going to take you. And then inside that you do an equal sign and then 2 quotes, and this is where you would just type the URL. And then once you've typed in your URL, you're just going to put a greater than sign and then whatever you want the link to your HTML to say, and then you use the closing tag, which is just the less than, a /, an A, and then a greater than sign. So now I have this link called My Name is Bob. I can click it. It's just going to change name equals Bob. Let's use a more trivial example. So let's create a variable up in here with PHP like this. You can separate HTML and PHP and not have to worry about breaking anything. So I'm going to create a variable called random number. And random number, there's a function called rand, and this takes some parameters if you want we're going to use. So we're going to say between 10 and 20. So the lower value, the higher value. And then in here we're going to echo a random number like this. See, we're mixing PHP and HTML together. There's no problem with that. No problem. So now I can actually refresh. My name is Bob. And each time it's going to be different unless we've already seen that. So name equals 14. So blah, 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 blah. So each time it's changing up top. So let's just change the link to this is a random number. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. And we'll change the get parameter to number. So now, if we're just on this page here, get, and we want to see if that number has been passed in, all we have to do, we just got to ask if, so not empty, so we would put an exclamation point before the empty call, get number, like so. and then we can echo the number you chose was, and then we can echo this get number variable, and then just so we can separate the two lines of HTML, we'll separate it with a break. And I'm not going to have an else statement, just because we can continuously click it. So now we have, this is a random number. We click it, the number you chose was 20. Click it again, the number you chose was 19, 11, 17, etc. 15. So that's how you can use get within a link like this. What if you wanted to have multiple get parameters? Well, to separate each parameter, after the value of the previous parameter, you just put an and sign, an ampersand. So and x equals y. So then, inside of this emptiness here, we can say and not empty get x. And okay, so then instead of this y here, since we know it's gonna, we'll keep it y. And then in parentheses, we'll echo out this get x variable and close the parenthesis like that. And so now if I refresh, this is a random number, it has y in there. We could change this to blah. Now what happens if I were to pass HTML through the URL like this? It's going to be outputted as HTML. That's not good. You don't want that. So how do we prevent HTML from being shown like this? Well, there's a nice function called, well, there's a few. You can use strip tags or HTML entities. Since we want to keep the B tags up there, we're going to use HTML entities. And this is one word, HTML, and then the word entities. And then you just pass in the string you want to make into clean HTML. So now if I were to refresh our page up here, we have x equals a bold tag, strong, and then a closing bold tag. Now if we refresh, now it's actually the string we passed in. This is important when it comes to security. You don't want people to be able to pass in code just like it's anything they can submit. You never want to trust the users submit whatever they submit. So that's how you can use multiple parameters and how you can be safe when dealing with these parameters. Awesome. So what if we had some string here and it contained a bunch of spaces? So this is a string with a bunch of spaces. Okay. How would we pass that into the URL without making it look weird? Well, we have a nice function called URL encode. And all it takes is it takes a string, and so we have our variable string, and it will encode it so it looks nice in the URL, sort of. So now if we were to refresh, and then click this is our random number, you can see up in the URL here that this space, or sorry, plus sign is plus sign A. So a space is essentially converted into a plus sign. Now you might be wondering to yourself, if I were to echo out get number now, would I get this plus, is plus, etc.? No, you wouldn't. The fun thing about get is that sorry, that whenever you try to echo it or to use it with the array it's already in, it's already decoded for you. So you don't have to worry about using URL decode on it. It's already decoded, so you don't have to go through that one step. So just to show you, if not empty of get number, and then we'll echo get number followed by a break. So now if I were to click it, Now you can see this is a string with a bunch of spaces, and each plus sign was converted to a space. Awesome. Alright, so now I told you we were going to dabble into forms a little bit, and we will. So let's jump into it. So I'm not going to teach you how to throw in some special parameters in the form tag. That's going to be until tomorrow, or Wednesday, sorry. We're just going to stick with creating an input box and a submit box. So I'll start off by saying we have an open and a close form tag like I hear, and then I'll say name, and then I'll make an input box, which is just input, and you say type is equal to text, and you give it a name. Name equals, we'll call it name. And since these are self-closing tags, you're going to use a / and then just close it with the greater than. And to do an input or a submit button, you do input type equals submit, and then say name equals submit if you'd like, and then the value we want to assign to it is what is your name. So now if I refresh our page, we have this little form here, and if I were to click what is your name, it's going to build the URL just for us like this, and we sort of don't want that submit in there, so we'll just get rid of this name. So now it's just what is your name, and now if you were to type in a name in here, Bob, and then click what is your name, it's going to pass it straight to the URL. Hello is my name. This is a name with spaces. You can see it's already throwing in that a space is equal to a plus sign. So most of the time you're probably going to be using get to separate actions, or you're going to be using it to get a few values from a form like we're doing here. So name is Marcus. Now how do we want to put the name back into the box, but only when it's not empty. So if I click this, name is empty. Okay, so let's create some PHP above the form tags there, and then let's create this variable called name. We're just going to set it to the empty string. So unopen 2 quotes actually. Now we can check if get name is not empty, then we can say name equals HTML entities of get name. So this just overrides that name variable we set up top here. Now if we were to go back to our HTML here, we can say value equals PHP echo name. So now if I type in hello, it's going to stick in there. Hello spaces? Well, hello space. Awesome. Get rid of it, nothing's there. So this is how you work with forms and how you can use them with get. So if I were to type in blah, it'll be blah. And if you were to view the source on that, you would see that it's translated into this ASCII code here. Sorry. And you can just keep playing blah 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 blah. So that's get in a nutshell. On Wednesdays we're going to learn about post, which is where these parameters are going to be hidden by the URL, but still they'll somehow be passed. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday.